This was the week where we realized that if being trash were an Olympic sport, the Olympic Committee would ironically get at least bronze, with obviously Bill Cosby getting the silver, and then like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch obviously taking the gold. So after denying the runner and gold medalist favorite, Sha'Carri Richardson, the chance to compete in the Olympics because she had cannabis in her system, which she said was due to the fact that her biological mother had died and she was taking the stress off, the Olympic Committee then went on, as we know, to ban swim caps that most black swimmers use. And then this week we found out prevented a nursing swimmer from bringing her 1-year-old child to Tokyo with her. Supposedly for COVID restrictions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now there's another issue, which is that an American fencer named Alen Hadzic has been allowed to compete despite multiple allegations of sexual misconduct. The guy is already in Tokyo right now. So 6 women fencers, including 2 Olympic athletes, wrote to the Olympic Committee that Hadzic should not be allowed to represent the United States because he was under an investigation for at least 3 accusations of sexual misconduct reported to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, the nonprofit agency responsible for protecting athletes from abuse. His presence at the games they said was a, quote, direct affront to fellow athletes and put them at risk. Of course, the U.S. Center for Safe Sport said it was okay. I don't know who the fuck these people are, but apparently they've gone to great lengths to make sure that everyone is safe. So what they did was acknowledging so this is actually the U.S. fencing team, acknowledging the severity of the allegations facing Hadzic. The USA Fencing, the athletic federation in charge of selecting the country's Olympic competitors, created a, quote, safety plan to keep him away from women and out of the Olympic Village. He flew on a separate plane from his teammates, is staying at a hotel 30 minutes away from the other athletes, and won't be allowed to practice alongside women teammates. Oh, cool. That's amazing. Like, you just have a rape allegation and you get like a private jet? That's amazing. That's like failing up. There should be, in fact, an entirely separate Olympics for predators, right? We could have like lawsuit hurdles, the slow apology race, archery, but they're the target. You know, I feel like we're creating a new Olympics here. And I don't know. It's pretty incredible. What did you guys think of this? Just the unfolding of this very, very obvious train wreck of a games this year. Josh,
Yeah.
what are your, yeah. Oh, Brianna, my bad.
No, it's okay. I think that, it's early still. And it's one thing after another so far with the Olympics, with the uniforms and stuff for the volleyball team. And they couldn't wear shorts. Like, that's absurd.
Yeah.
And the bikini bottoms that they make women wear in those events are basically just thongs. And it's just shows that patriarchy is also in control of the Olympics. That's what I take from it.
Yes, 100%.
And then there's there's on top of that, there's like kind of the added like structural problems, right, that just hosting the Olympics poses, and the kind of displacement that happens of where people live. And it just feels like no offense to any individual involved, but like, who the fuck are you, the Olympics? Like, we all agreed as the world that just the Olympics gets to make whatever rules they want for everywhere. Does that make sense? Like, it just feels so strange to me that it's like, oh, this is international waters. We just have to, or it's the opposite of that. It's
right.
Like, we just have to obey these like very specific rules set by this organization, and all they offer is the Olympics. It feels like I have so much respect for Olympic athletes who are not accused of numerous sexual assaults, but I will say that, like, how did a body that's like, if like, hey, we need to decide who swims the fastest, like, how are they dictating how governments behave?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, right, in terms of the ways that they can put the different bars and different like hurdles up for governments to abide by, whether it's in Japan or, London or the United States or whatever. We know Brazil, like the ways that sort of like the destruction in the path of all these games and things like the World Cup, that's clear. And number one is their bottom line and like the money that they're going to make. But it's so if every single story this year weren't like, oh, another Black woman is being prevented from, competing, or a woman can't breastfeed her child, Norwegian athletes have to wear thong, like this, the whole thing compounded. You're just like, I think we need a little rules update, buddy.
Right.
We need to change. Yeah. And also like,
the whole thing feels to me like if the Scripps National Spelling Bee would be like, at the beginning, we set every child on fire. And if you want to participate, these are the rules. And everyone was just like, yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll abide by that.
Totally. And like also just the idea that this, I mean, and there's different bodies here, right? So the, whatever, the safe sport, American safe sport body, which is literally tasked with saying whether or not a player is a danger to other people. It's like HR for Olympic sports in the United States. And they said that it was okay for this rapist or alleged rapist to go to the Olympic Games. Like, my God. Like, and then, the Olympic Games are like, well, we've got these cardboard boxes as beds. You can't assault anyone here. Like, come on. It's so obvious and egregious. And I don't want to belabor it too much, but I do think it's important to celebrate the kind of excellence that someone like Sha'Carri Richardson, 21 years old, was bringing to these games. And sadly, that was cut short this year. Mind you, I'm about to play the clip from her qualifying race, right? So she's a sprinter, 100 meters. She came in last a year ago. And I gotta say, like, running is one, like, I love gymnastics, but I love running mostly because of their physiques are just insane. And I say that in a zero creepy way, just to like, damn, hashtag goals, like, and like she came in last in 2019. 2020, came in last in 2020. And this was her this year, a few weeks before they found cannabis in her system. So that's her hugging her grandmother, who apparently is the woman who did raise her. And I just get so choked up every time I see that footage. But this is an amazing athlete, and she's got a big future ahead of her. And I hope that they change their policies around cannabis, like some THC, a little bit of THC.
How about however much you want? This is truly like, I understand that rules are in place for reasons at times, but I think this is kind of a moment where we've come up against like a case of like, oh, maybe we can reevaluate this unjust rule rather than using it to steamroll a person who is, deserving of being celebrated and deserving of this opportunity, right? And because I think like there are people like, well, a rule's a rule, and it's like, it's not a law of science. It's not like Newton's first law of motion is if you have a trace amount of THC in your system, you can't participate in the Olympic Games. Like rules can be changed. And this is like it's not even a rule that requires like an exception. It's a rule that like you could abolish with no ill effects, right? Like, I think this point has been it made so much that it is like, it's not novel of me to say, but like THC is not a performance enhancing drug for runners. And so like, what is the problem other than like wanting to be able to people do with their bodies?
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that we're leaving out too is like the healing properties that THC and CBD offers as like a world-class athlete, and the wear and tear that she's putting on her body, and the fact that she's perhaps maybe using like a higher CBD strain to, help in her recovery, rather than using painkillers. So it absolutely should be reevaluated.
Yes. And I just want to mention that it gets like a lot darker and more effed up, especially when it comes to policing gender. I just want to say that's a story for another time. But the Olympic Committee is also very strict about certain things like hormones, testosterone, estrogen. And so there are cisgender women who haven't qualified because they don't have enough estrogen to qualify to compete as a woman. And this is relevant because there are a number of trans athletes in the current Olympics. They're being vilified, they're being demonized, and we know the way that trans athletes and have been used by the right to so-called protect women's sports. And I think we're going to have a moment. We're going to have a shift because there is a lot of vitriol going around and a lot of also barriers being broken by trans athletes.
Well, that whole argument with trans women having like a competitive advantage is straight up bullshit. And I'll say it right now, because if it wasn't bullshit, if they were really caring about leveling the playing field in sports, they would be in an uproar over the fact that trans men being forced to play on teams with women when they're taking testosterone. Because when you start taking testosterone, you have increased speed and strength almost immediately. When you're on estrogen, that's not the case. So it's a bullshit argument meant to divide people and turn trans issues into a wedge issue to divide people.
100%. Yeah.
And it hurts people, right? Like that's the thing is like it froths up this kind of prejudice, and the effect is like people are being used as political pawns to score points and not being treated like on their merits as human beings and people who really want to compete in their fields. It's
totally
real upsetting.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do